Hello, welcome to the live stream. I almost didn't make it because I have a pepperoncini kitten going on right now. Dora has had a cold all week, which I think she gave to me. Not entirely sure how that works, but her little kitty asthma, her poor nose has been so stuffed up all morning, and she's gotten increasingly mean, which she's not normally a very mean cat. And I think she's trying to tell me she is very uncomfortable and she would like me to fix it. So, I had to put her, I had to put her out of the room, but she's been having a little meltdown. And she was pretty much attached to my arm before I left. So anyway, poor baby. And I don't know if maybe we should actually take her to an emergency vet, even though it's Sunday, because she is so stuffed up. She is breathing so laboredly now. But she still has energy to fight me. So I'm not totally sure. Anyway, I know you're not all here to talk cats. So let's talk about what we're actually going to talk about. Just give her a cold shower. I don't know. That sounds like a great way to end up completely covered in cat scratches, to give my cat a cold shower. Also, she's stuffed up. Don't you need to give her a hot shower? Wouldn't you need to put her over a steam pot to increase the humidity? Well, welcome everybody. So glad you're here. This is how wrinkled my notes are, by the way, and that is because the cat insisted on sitting on them before the live stream. It's a lot of cat content today. Welcome to Talking Dough and Eating Donuts. The donut today, which is probably now covered in cat hair because I've been fighting the cat off, is a old-fashioned donut, but it's a pumpkin old-fashioned, and I'm stoked. It is a day-old donut because they had buy one, get one last night, and I decided to just go ahead with it. But I figured an old-fashioned donut, they tend to do pretty well the next day, as opposed to one with a ton of cream. But Dora has been very insistent on laps all week, though. It has been at the height of lap neediness. And I have been the only lap available because Erin has been in London. And she has let it be known that she is supposed to be in charge of all laps. So our actual topic today, as multiple people have probably pointed out from the chat, is to talk about the wonder of student loan forgiveness, and unfortunately the fact that the student loan forgiveness that was approved by Congress but via the Biden administration utilizing the HEROES Act, which is $10,000 of student loan forgiveness for most borrowers with federal student loans, and $20,000 for borrowers that received a Pell Grant when they were in school, which the application has already been live for a couple weeks now, and quite a few people have applied. And some people have even also already gotten checks in the mail for a refund of what they have paid towards their loans since the beginning of the pause in 2020 on student loans. So some people have been cut these checks, and those checks might get clawed back because as soon as this passed, all sorts of cases were filed in federal courts across the land. Lots of conservative groups have been trying to find a way to stop this. And a lot of them, their legal challenges have been on the framework of, does the president have authority to do this? But one of the big issues with a lot of these is who has standing, essentially, because to bring any kind of court case against something, for example, a federal policy or a presidential policy, you need to have standing. And the Supreme Court has already tossed out a number of these cases getting to the Supreme Court in accelerated fashion. However, Justice Amy Coney Barrett already tossed back on October 20th and like refused to hear a court case that was filed by a Wisconsin organization made up of about 100 taxpaying individuals called the Brown County Taxpayers Association, that essentially was trying to say that like there's no way that they can do this. In 2007, the Supreme Court said, if every federal taxpayer could sue to challenge any government expenditure, the federal courts would cease to function as courts of law and would be cast in the role of general complaint bureaus. And that one was done on the grounds that, so essentially, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who is a Trump appointee, tossed this out from being heard by the Supreme Court, based on the fact that, we can't just have all taxpayers challenging something, because that's not how the courts work. Yes, there is division of powers. Yes, there is meant to be a balance of powers. But, if I, as a taxpayer, could sue for my taxes being used on wars I do not agree with, that would make the courts cease to function. And so the judge that has decided that there is standing and has essentially put a halted any progress on these student loans, and the application is now closed again. And an appeal has already been filed by the Biden administration, but the student loan forgiveness was blocked by Judge T. Pittman, who is a judge in Texas. And this particular case is very interesting because I am not a legal expert. I am not a lawyer. But it's very hard for me to understand how these two people have necessarily, the fundamentals of their case seem a little strange to me. So there's two folks that are student loan borrowers that do not qualify for this student loan relief, because one of them doesn't qualify because they took out a private student loan as opposed to a federal student loan. We have talked quite a lot about how private student loans do not qualify for this forgiveness. So if you have had refinanced your federal loan into a private student loan, then you wouldn't qualify for it. And then the other was a borrower who is now low income, but was not at the time that they attended college, and therefore did not qualify for the Pell Grant, which the Pell Grant additional forgiveness. So if you got a Pell Grant at any point when you were in college, then you qualified for double the amount of student loan forgiveness. So instead of $10,000, you would qualify for $20,000. And this borrower is now low income, but wasn't when they were in college. So they're trying to say that it is unfair that they, as an individual, now that are low income, don't qualify for the extra student loan forgiveness. So it's very interesting that this is the one, because the standing to me seems rough. But also the remedy that the judge has proposed in this case seems outsized, right? So the judge is saying it's unfair. These two people are arguing there was never any public comment period, and it's not fair that they, as borrowers, were not allowed to have public comment, which I am just going to say that isn't exactly how a democracy works. You don't get public comment periods for every single thing. We are a republic, and you elect representatives to go represent your interests, but they don't necessarily have a public comment period for everything. But anyway, that's just my Civics 101 impression of how our country works. But their argument is there was no public comment period. But the remedy that the judge has suggested is the whole program is blocked, which it doesn't seem fair to say these two borrowers don't qualify for this relief, and therefore they shouldn't get it. But some of the attacks that were included in part of the argument for this was the idea that the president doesn't have the authority to do this, because what he was relying on, and what Congress in 2020 extended further, was the 2003 HEROES Act. And the HEROES Act allows the president, in times of national emergencies, to pause student loan pause or modify federal student loan repayment. And the goal with that was to mean that people in disaster areas would, let's say you have a massive flood in your area and you qualify for flood relief. Well, the idea here was that the president would be able to say, okay, well, the extra income that you would get from FEMA relief or from grants to rebuild or whatever should not count against your account against you in student loan relief programs. I will also say that while the student loan crisis had started to begin in 2003, it certainly looks a lot bigger and a lot worse in 2022. And the idea that COVID-19 is not a national emergency is very strange to me, because the national emergency has been clearly established by many, many acts of Congress. So that's essentially what's going on. The basic next steps, I see chat is going out of the corner of my eye like real heavy, so I'm going to answer questions there in a second. But the very basics of what's going on right now is that, unfortunately, the application has been closed despite the fact that a ton of people have already filled in the application. On November 3rd, President Obama had said, or President Biden, wow, that just thrown back. President Biden on November 3rd said that 26 million Americans had already provided the necessary information to the Education Department to get the relief. So, and that the department was on track to approve cancellation for 16 million borrowers already. So this is a lot of people that are affected by this. This decision came out on Thursday, and it will be appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court. One of the reasons we're not happy about this is the Fifth Circuit Court has made some wild decisions in the past. I've talked about the Fifth Circuit Court when it comes to healthcare quite a few times, because that is in fact where the wonderful case, all of the cases that are trying to destroy the Affordable Care Act go through. This is one of those cases of like venue shopping. If you are, there are many groups. I think there's like 6 states right now that have a court case against this, fronted by taxpayer advocates groups or conservative groups, that are trying all sorts of different attack methods and all sorts of different courts. But one of the things you do when you are trying to do public interest cases like this is that you do venue shop. And if you are trying to do a conservative tax thing, or conservative policy with regards to shoddily founded ideas of people's bodily autonomy, Fifth Circuit Court is a very appealing court as far as the venue. So the next step is that this will get appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court, and then from that Fifth Circuit Court decision, whoever loses will likely appeal again. The appeal has already been filed by the White House. They already said that they had filed an appeal. Generally, these levels of appeals, and whether or not the Supreme Court would hear this after it would get appealed up to from the Fifth Circuit Court up to the Supreme Court, is that usually this could take 6 months or more. But all of the courts have been fast tracking this because of the number of people involved. Like I said, 16 million people were on track to get this forgiveness by January. Some people have already gotten these refund checks that was part of this executive decision. There's also a bunch of provisions in this that are in this executive decision that was made by Biden for student loan relief that have more to do with things they're not just about this forgiveness. This is about the ways that they calculate income-based repayment for people, the ways that debt gets forgiven after 20 years of income-based repayment and the taxability of that. There was a bunch of long-term things that were a huge factor in here. So yeah. Okay, there's so much chat here, so let me look at that. Can Texas even do that? Block student loan forgiveness, I mean. Well, I mean, yes, the courts do have the power to block things, but the question is the standing make sense? And does the relief granted by the judge make sense? And that's what the appeal is based on. Aaron says, I don't understand how Texas can block it for every other state too. I mean, from my basic understanding of how the courts work, all of the federal courts work for everything, right? So any decision heard by the Supreme Court, it doesn't go to the Supreme Court first. It goes to these federal courts. And this is one of the reasons why, even though we spend so much time focusing on the Supreme Court, these federal judges are incredibly important too. So if you're someone that it does not like these kind of decisions that are coming out of these, with regards to, for example, a lot of these abortion restrictions that are coming out of some of these more conservative courts and being appealed and going up and up and up. Like, these federal judges, the Trump administration appointed more federal judges than any other administration had in like any recent years. And so we are now living the legacy out of those federal judges appointed by the Trump administration. And they were slamming through confirmations for these federal judges. And so it is like important to recognize and understand that there is more at play than just the Supreme Court. I think it's easy to focus on the Supreme Court because, frankly, I think it's kind of a bizarre institution to have so few people there and to have these lifetime appointments. But then increasingly we're appointing people with like only 3 years of experience on the federal bench. Anyway. So when this does go to the Supreme Court, because it will, like, whoever loses at the next one will appeal regardless up to the Supreme Court. Whether or not the Supreme Court decides to hear it is a different thing. But the judge that oversees the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court justice that oversees the Fifth Circuit is Judge Alito, also not known as a particularly progressive justice, but neither is Amy Coney Barrett. And Amy Coney Barrett already rejected the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, different standing one where they were like, we are suing because we're taxpayers and we don't like this. The Geograph Concept says, just absolutely ruin people's lives in Texas. Good luck getting voted in again. I don't know if that's how he got power. Nope. Federal justices are appointed. Possum Planner says, yeah, not holding my breath for that. Plan A is public service loan forgiveness. Plan B is income-based repayment. Plan C is leave nonprofit for the private sector. I understand all of those goals. I left nonprofit for the private sector a couple years ago, and I have been relieved at the differences in how things are approached, because I had gotten so very, very used to the way that nonprofits operate and the things that they thought were reasonable. But that isn't to say there's bad jobs in all sectors. And obviously the private sector has tons of very, very bad jobs and very bad working conditions, but so did nonprofits. But nonprofit employees aren't expected to complain because it's for the greater good. Charbox says, haha, they timed the student loan forgiveness thing to start with midterms. Nice. 101 of how to get young people to vote. Well, and I think that's like the really frustrating thing is that I have seen a lot of conspiracy theories that like the student loan forgiveness was done in order to get young people to vote, but they were always planning on it getting challenged and struck down. But the Democrats have put far, far too many resources into trying to get this through and process the idea or the conspiracy that there was any expectation that it would get immediately struck down or blocked by a judge, I think is unreasonable. But you know, I'm about these conspiracy theories. So Charbox says, over here in Europe, studying is free. Not only that, in Denmark, they pay all students kind of a UBI, about $1,000 per month, so that they can focus on their studies and not have to worry about school too much. Yeah, I mean, that's how the Linux operating system got built, right? Linus Torvalds is Finnish, and he was like... He essentially was a eternal student and was living off the student stipend while he built Linux. So, you know, we have Linux. We have the Finnish student support to thank for that. I went to university in Germany, and I paid far less for my... Even with like the higher healthcare expenses I had to pay as a foreigner in Germany and everything, which to be fair, I couldn't even access healthcare here in the US because it was prior to the ACA. But, it cost me like, I don't know, I was paying international student fees and it still cost me like less than $1,000 a semester. And that included my bus pass. And now it is, in Germany, it is free for international students other than like the very nominal like taxes or very nominal fee, like less than a couple €100 to like pay for health insurance and student bus passes. So, it's very like, I don't think anybody is going to say that the American student loan system makes any sense. Like, I don't see anybody arguing that it makes sense. I think there's just a lot of people arguing that they got screwed by it, so it's not fair that everybody doesn't get screwed by it, and or they're making the argument that, like, it isn't fair that, like, people signed up for the debt, so they should have to pay it. But the absolute, like, the way that student loan debt has been structured has led to the inflation and education costs in the country, in the U.S., to be just absolutely way outpace the rate of inflation. I think it's like 500% in the past 20 years. And one of the big things that happened was in the 90s, they made it so that student loan debt could not be discharged by bankruptcy in the United States. So it is the only kind of debt that, like, going into bankruptcy will not get rid of. And then that means that, like, lenders in particular have no incentive to really work with you. Also, the compounding interest rates, the fact that they accrue interest while you're in school, except for a very few types of subsidized loans. The income-based repayment is set at such high rates. Like, the fact that there was essentially a blank check underwritten by the government that cannot be discharged in bankruptcy means that universities were able to jack up their prices, knowing that someone would have to bankroll it, even if it is with fictional money. And, like, also the fact that more and more institutions have like, more and more things have that used to be training programs, apprenticeship programs in the United States where you wouldn't have to take out student loan debt, have been turned into things that you would need to take student loan debt out for. So, work like becoming a dental hygienist, like a lot of, like, HVAC. Is a great example. IT certificates, all of these things have hairdressing. All of these things have really become things that have become more and more regulated and therefore are requiring 2-year degrees, a lot of which are happening at for-profit colleges that are taking advantage of low-income students to get them to sign up for lots and lots of student loans to pay for degrees that may or may not make sense. And if you did attend one of the for-profit colleges and did not, that was regularly misleading students, then you are still eligible for student loan borrower's defense, and that is not part of this decision. So borrower's defense, essentially, there are a huge list of institutions, which include, like, the Art Institute, Carrington College, ITT Tech, that are these, like, 2-year for-profit colleges that were shilling out degrees, 2-year degrees and apprenticeship degrees that essentially didn't lead to a better job or a better paying job for anybody, and had a lot of predatory lending practices and predatory recruitment practices that didn't end up materializing for these students. So essentially you can get those debts forgiven. And the forgiveness is called borrower's defense. So if you are in that camp, you should still look it up because that is not affected by this ruling. So Possum says, I work in higher ed. Don't even get me started on for-profits. Pro tip, if you went to a for-profit college and they since closed, you probably qualify for debt forgiveness. Yes. Not even if they just closed. Like, quite a few of currently functioning schools are on that list. Geograph Concept says, update, German grad school is taught in German, which I do not know. Actually, that is not true. There are tons and tons of master's programs in Europe that are taught in English. Quite a few of the master's programs are taught in English because they attract international students from all over the world. That is true for ones in Denmark, for ones in Germany, for ones in Austria. You can go to findamasters.com. That's one of the websites I like to use. It'll let you search by country. It'll let you search by fees. There's also quite a lot of scholarships available specifically to Americans that are looking to go abroad. Going abroad for your master's can be one of the smartest things you can do, especially if you're interested in a non-funded master's program in the US. Like, you should be able to go to grad school funded if you are in the sciences. including the social sciences, I say as a social scientist. But if you are interested in going for something that is not a funded grad program, like, for example, English is hard to find funded grad programs for, there are plenty of programs. Also, plus side of that is many master's programs in Europe are actually only a year long. Not all of them. Most of the free countries, they tend to be 2 years. But yeah. Michael says, okay, by that logic, I'm going to stop paying Social Security in my paycheck because I wouldn't benefit from it. Ha ha. I mean, I know people that like to claim that, right? Why not make the case that relief should be expanded? So frustrating. I don't know. I mean, because one, that wasn't the goal of this. The goal of this was to shut the whole thing down because it was fronted by a conservative taxpaying group. But I don't understand why that would be granted the relief. Natalia, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Let me know if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The cases made by those loan borrowers are so upsetting as well. Literally, well, I don't qualify, so no one should be able to. I know, I also understand the frustration. There are a lot of people that are in really crappy positions where they owe, like, private student loans that they've been paying on, like, all through the pandemic while other things have been paused, or they applied, like, their stuff got refinanced kind of against their will into FEPLS loans, which originally were going to qualify for this, and the last minute they were said they're not. So I understand that a lot of people just feel like it feels really arbitrary and like they would have made different decisions if they had perfect information. But now I think there's a lot of people that are like stuck in the situation of just waiting. So all I wanted to say about the expedited framework is there is hope that maybe this will be heard before January when these payments were going to start going out. Geograph says, I can't wait till Twitter is super dead and you are my only source of news information on these topics. Yeah, my question is, how am I going to get my news and information? Natalia says, this whole thing is making me literally nauseous. It's so frustrating and angering that so many people are determined to take loan relief away from people who need it. I agree. I think it's really frustrating. Charbox says, do you speak German, Anomaly? I do speak German, but when I originally went to university, I speak German decently. The German government says that I speak it well enough to get a visa based on it. I speak at like a B2 to B3 level. It used to be closer to C1. Not great, not C1 anymore, but I do stay up to date on my Duolingo, so come be my Duolingo friend. I have like a more than 5 years long streak on Duolingo. And I also was taking German class last year, like in person, because I was trying to get more like speaking not to a robot experience. I do speak German, but my point is I did not speak German when I went to school for university. I took German while I was there, but I took all of my classes in English. I went to the Freie Universität, which is free university. It was part of the American sector of West Berlin. It's still a university that has many English language programs and many English language classes. Also, almost all the engineering colleges in Germany will have at least 1 or 2 English language programs because like a ton of my friends when I lived in Berlin were actually international students from India that go there for their master's degree abroad. And so, yeah. Natalia says, you've got my name right. Great. I think if you went into DeVry after 2008, you qualify for debt forgiveness. Yes. So there are lots of options for debt forgiveness if you went to one of those for-profit colleges. It's not across the board, but just know that this program is not affected by that, nor is the expanded relief for disabled borrowers affected by this. So if you are permanently and totally disabled, the student loan debt forgiveness has been made more easy. I'm not going to say it's a walk in the park. It's super easy comparatively if you are permanently and totally disabled and you have a service-connected disability as a veteran. But they have expanded it. They've made it easier. They've lowered the barrier as far as how many payments you need to, like how many years you need to have been totally and permanently disabled. And you don't necessarily need to be receiving SSI or SSDI in order to qualify for that, although it would help. But just know, even if you're still on the wait list for SSDI or SSI, or if you won't qualify for some number of reasons, that does not necessarily mean that you would not qualify for disability forgiveness. So yes, you can study English in most of Europe, not only UK, Ireland. Okay, yeah, I will also say that Ireland is like not that cheap, partially because of this. It's not that cheap. UK and Ireland have kind of like not at the same rate as American universities, but they do also have a lot of inflation. They have a more sane student loan system there than we do, but it's still not great. But they do actually put limits on how much the cost of education can grow each year. If you can get residency in Europe, then Irish school is quite a good deal. But yeah, there are lots and lots of, the Netherlands has a lot of programs that are in English. Denmark, Finland has a few. Germany, I've spent a lot of time looking at this. So yeah. Kenna says, I want to help a friend with loan forgiveness from ITT Tech. Where do we start? So look up borrower's defense on studentloans.gov. And you should be able to find the list. So it's called here we go. It's called Student Aid. I forgot they changed their URL like a month and a half ago. It's studentaid.gov, studentaid.gov/borrower-defense. That is the place to start. And that includes the applying for borrower's defense, getting organized. Essentially, you should just need to prove that. The Gerling Broom says, just dropped into this live. I'm not in student loan debt, but two of my brothers applied for their forgiveness. I'm really annoyed that this judge just blocked it. Agreed. I think it's really frustrating because it's making it really hard to plan. As a lot of people know, student loan forgiveness or student loan forbearance right now, where you don't have to pay, the pause on student loans, as we've been calling it in the media, it ends December 31st. So the hope is that this crap will get worked out and move its way through the courts before then. But like, as you know, end of year, not a great time to get people to do things. So we will see. Does anybody have any other questions about this? Possum says, I hope that they at least let the other rules stand for now regarding interest accrual. I know, I would be really bummed if this whole thing got struck down. I was actually looking at the language of the HEROES Act, both the renewal in 2020 and the 2003 HEROES Act. And, once again, I was struck by the fact that I desperately want to go to law school, but I don't want to pay for law school. Relevant. Because I love looking at these kind of things because I have a warped brain that just loves looking for like loopholes in really mundane documents. But I was looking at the HEROES Act and I don't know, it looks like it very obviously gives the president this authority. But someone on NPR described this as a toddler problem. I do like that. If I can't have it, you can't have it either. My cat is being suspiciously quiet, and she's been very cranky all morning, and I do want to check on her just because she did have that cold at the beginning. So I'm going to put you all on pause for a second. Come up with your questions. I'm just going to go make sure my cat is just taking a nap. She is curled up on the couch and in the blanket that I carried her out in there as a burrito because she was being so cranky. And she just glared back at me with the most expression. So I don't think she's doing well. I don't know. Anybody with pet medical experience that tells us if she's had a cold all week, but she's been like really, really stuffed up for 2 hours, should she go to the emergency vet? Like, is this a thing? Can they do anything for her? Oh, thank you for the super chat. Charback says, cookie for the cat. I don't know if a cookie will fix her, but thank you for the super chat. Speaking of which, I think it might be donut time. We also can talk about the FTX crash if anybody is interested in knowing what's going on with crypto and like the free fall that's happening in the crypto world. We can talk about that as well. But I have a donut, and then we have a double donut. So Erin has a savory donut. I'm going to see if Erin can heat up. Oh, okay. Erin says, I just called an urgent care, and they can't take her because they can't quarantine upper respiratory infections. Okay. I don't really understand what else she's expected to do. I hope she doesn't have COVID. I didn't have COVID this week. I checked. I had kind of, my taste went slightly dulled. It was like someone had turned down the saturation on my taste, and I had like a cold for like a day and a half, and I tested multiple times. I was worried at first that it was COVID because of the taste thing, but then the taste came back, and also it never totally disappeared, and then I've been fine, and I tested negative twice, so. Okay. Kenna says, is she wheezing? Yeah, she's been wheezing for quite a long time. She is like, and then she's really angry about the wheezing. So, poor baby. She's just been like complete sniffly madness. I'm a little worried. So, if anybody saw the cat, she only has one eye because she had an eye removed like almost 2 years ago, I think. And she had an eye removed. Originally, they thought that it was HPV, but like none of the HPV drugs were working on it. HPV in cats is different than HPV in humans, but it's like completely normal. It's like shelter cough. But she like never kicked it. And so none of the HPV drugs were working forever. And then it got so bad that eventually they had to remove her eye. They removed her eye, and we actually got we paid for it to get analyzed by a lab, and they found out that actually it was a very rare type of cancer, eye cancer in cats. But they said it had plenty of, like it wasn't in the margins or whatever. So essentially it hadn't moved anywhere else. So she's one eye, which has been fine. I don't think she even notices, but her other eye has had a bunch of crust, in it. And now I'm like getting worried that she has like something going on, upper respiratory. Of course, I Googled it, and doing the research on the internet was like, she has cancer in her nose and that's why she's wheezing, which is just, of course I shouldn't have Googled that. But yes. Abel Jack says, not a vet, but cats and upper respiratory things can go bad quickly. Urgent care, at least for peace of mind. Well, apparently she can't go to urgent care. So I don't know. Maybe we need to text the vet friend. Okay. So we have a donut, and, Aaron is going to remote in for the donut. Let's, get this back channel set up. All right. Let's make sure I can actually hear Aaron on the... Great. Okay, so this is the donut that I have, which is a pumpkin cheesecake, and it has some cat hair on it because Dora was being... not pumpkin cheesecake, pumpkin old-fashioned. So it's one of those old-fashioned style donuts, which you can kind of tell with the little X on the top. And then we have Aaron joining. And Aaron has a... What do you have?
I have a pesto vegan chicken donut. And I'm pretty excited about it.
I am nervous for yours, so your weird savory donut, but I'm going to take my bite of mine.
Okay.
Oh, it's super orange inside.
Ooh.
And the chicken is made out of soy curls, is that right?
The chicken is made out of soy curls. Oh, there's pesto inside too. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I want to show you the inside of it. It's actually really tasty. Soy curls in there and pesto filling. I kind of like this. It's more interesting than the mac and cheese one I had yesterday.
All right. Is it mainly just taste like pesto, or does it have a flavor other than, like, do the soy curls just add texture, or do they?
Yeah. Soy curls are 100% just for the texture. It tastes like pesto.
All right.
All pesto donut. Yep.
So fried pesto ball.
Fried pesto ball. Yeah. I would eat it again.
This is really good. I am like over the moon for this one. The vegan pumpkin old fashioned is like really good.
It looks really good.
It's super hard frosting, so you don't have that like melty creamy frosting that I'm less of a fan of. It's just like a hard glaze. It's really good. All right. I'm giving mine I think 5 out of 5, frankly. It's been a while.
Wow.
But I think this is a 5 out of 5. The pumpkin flavor is not that strong, but it's just solid. What's your rating, Aaron?
I'll also give 5 out of 5 because, frankly, the pesto is really good, and I have no complaints.
5 out of 5?
Yep. It's a win.
All right. Both of these were winners. Man. All right. This was great. I think Aaron is going to get off the stream after this and then go call some vets, unfortunately.
Yeah. The 24/7 hospital that I called first was like, we're a hospital emergency room. We're not urgent care. Go call urgent care. And I called an urgent care, and they're like, we can't take your pet if she has upper respiratory infection. And they sent me a list of places to call, and one of them is the emergency room that I called first. I think I'm gonna call them back and be like, hey, I just called the place that you sent me to, and they were like, come back here. So, yeah.
Poor baby.
Poor baby.
She's definitely really cranky, and I think she's a little scared because she has been having so much trouble breathing. It hasn't stopped her from playing or being spicy, though.
Yeah, that's good.
But the thing is that she was exerting herself playing, and then it was making her breathe harder, but she's wheezing, so, poor baby.
Yep.
You can video chat with vets, no? I don't know what they would do if they video chat, because I think they would need to identify, like, what it is, right? I don't know. We don't have, like, a stethoscope to hold up to the cat or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, like someone asked, by the way, Kenna asked, have you taken her butt temp? And this was held for review by YouTube because they thought it was spam. But we do not have, I don't think we have a butt thermometer for cats. So, unfortunately. So, yeah. Kind of a bummer.
Can you do that with one of the laser ones? Maybe we should get one of those laser ones.
Yeah, because you don't want to stick your thermometer up the cat's butt. Yeah. Although I will say vets are always like, that's why I'm so worried about her being spicy, because she's normally so chill that even the vets are like, oh, she doesn't even mind it when we stick a thermometer up her butt. She's super sweet. So the fact that she's being really mean, and she's being really mean to me, it's like makes me concerned. Because I think she's been trying to tell me I am cranky and angry. So, all right.
Well, I will go call
yes, thank you very much for testing the savory donut, because we got double donuts to go through this month. So,
yeah, that was it was delicious.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right. Kenneth thinks they might be able to treat her in the parking lot. One of them doesn't even, quite a few of them don't even have parking lots, because we live very much in the city. Aaron on screen, this has never happened. We actually did do it, I think maybe last week or the week before. The week before, I think. But yeah, we're still working the finer points of it out. Synchronized donut eating. I hope you have the Olympics interested. I don't know. It seems a little weird. Top tier donut confirmed. I agree. So these type of donuts, you can only find them in Portland, right? Well, this particular brand of donuts is only available in Portland at one shop, where they do a bunch of seasonal flavors, which is why we try a different kind every week. But vegan donuts are available. I have managed to find a vegan donut every place that I have been abroad on a Sunday for a live stream. So we've managed to find them at every place. what the definition of a donut. I will say we had a vegan cronut in Wien, and it was so good. And now I understand why everybody was like obsessed with the cronuts. Maybe not to the point of like paying people to stand in line for them in New York that we saw. Some people have too much money to throw around, and yet they're begrudging people their student loan forgiveness. Anyway, people were paying other people to stand in line waiting for their cronuts. And I was like, there's no way these cronuts are that good. And then I had a cronut in Wien, and I was like, oh, this is really good. It's really good. Newbub1 says, I like pesto, so I'd try it for sure. Yeah, there are vegan donuts, which you can find lots of places. Hopefully she is okay. Cheerio, Aaron. Well, thank you all for letting Aaron come in. Okay, what do you want to talk about with the FTX crash? We streamed for 2.5 hours last week, so we're going to keep it much shorter this week, partially because I have lots of other work to do. But we can talk, if nobody has any more questions that I almost definitely can't answer because we're now just waiting the courts. If you did get a refund check from your student loan borrower, because you requested a refund of the payments you made during the pause, I would not spend it yet. And I'm just going to say, like, even if you do cash it and put it in your account, I would maybe hold it somewhere and don't spend it just yet. And that's because I think there's a possibility that people are going to have to pay that back if this goes poorly. So, okay. So what happened with FTX this weekend? Like, what is going on? What happened with crypto? So FTX was the third largest crypto exchange. And the CEO is Sam Bankman-Fried. And originally, so FTX already had started to have a bit of a bank run liquidity crisis. And a bank run is what we saw a lot prior to the implementation of FDIC insurance in the United States, which is essentially, it's a propelling series of situations. So if you go to a bank, so the average bank, we'll start by explaining how banks work, and then we'll kind of talk about how this is relevant to the FTX crash. So the way banks work is that you might put in $10,000 and your neighbor puts in $10,000. And then a different neighbor says, hey, I want to get a mortgage. And they go to the bank and the bank says, oh, okay, we will lend you a mortgage for $5,000. And they will, some of the money that you have put into the bank will be lent out to this other person. And that's how banks make money, is, that they will lend things out. However, if you decide part of the stability of the banking system is your knowledge that if you go and say, I want all $10,000 that I have in that bank at once, that they will produce it. And if you don't have faith that the $10,000 that you put into that bank will be able to come back to you, then you don't have faith in that banking institution. Well, part of what gives you that faith, because banks do not have on hand all of their borrowers' deposits. They have what's called a reserve requirement, which we've talked about reserve requirements when we come to like ways that you can combat inflation. It's one of the last tools the Federal Reserve has, where the Federal Reserve can up the amount that banks have to have in reserve. So there's usually a certain percentage of borrowers' deposits they have to have in reserve. What happens with a bank run is that you, as a person, go and say, hey, I want to get my all $10,000 I put into this bank out. And then at the same time, your other neighbor that has $10,000 in that bank decides that they also want to go take their $10,000 off because they heard like you took that money out and they got like nervous that the bank was going to fall. And so a bank run is when a huge flock of borrowers decide that they're all going to pull this at once. Part of regulation, and in particular when it comes to banks, is what is called FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is that banks pay for the insurance of this federal program for FDIC insured deposits that essentially says that yes, this bank is doing all the right things right. We are regulating it. And they are paying into this insurance that if everybody decides to pull out their money, even though that they don't have all of it in reserves, we will back this bank up. And that is what we did see with quite a few of the bank failures that happened as a fallout from the financial crisis. So one of the big issues with crypto is that it is not regulated. So there's different levels of regulation that happen at a country level, but in particular when we talk about FTX as an exchange, is that it was regulated and came out of the Bahamas. The Bahamas is extremely well known for not having regulation on crypto. And so they have they had lent out a bunch of money to their like investment firm from borrowers' deposits. So they functioned as a exchange. So the idea is you would give them, a certain amount of money in US dollars or in whatever like fiat currency that you have, and then in order to turn that into crypto, they would help you convert that to crypto. And one of the benefits that they would have for you is that you might, if you gave a certain amount, you might be able to do that on margin. So you might be able to invest a little bit more than you would actually put in. That's called a margin account. So they function the same way as a lot of other exchanges. However, they did not have any of the kinds of insurance that even like investments have. So the same with like a 401k. If, for example, Vanguard goes down, my money, as long as it's not lost, as long as the underlying stock assets are not lost, those assets that I have bought that are in my 401k, those index funds, if Vanguard goes down, are backed up by what's called SPIS insurance, which is a type of insurance for investment firms. And none of this is true for most of crypto because it is mostly an entirely unregulated space. FTX had worked harder than a lot of the other exchanges to be like, we believe that some regulation is good, we're above board, and we even saw some governments putting some goodwill behind crypto, partially because of the very charismatic CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, who, had donated a bunch of money. He was a billionaire, theoretically, not a billionaire anymore. And so we saw a lot of investment kind of happening in the world of countries. We saw a lot of kind of the bigger players invested in it. However, they were doing what's called hypothecating funds, which just essentially means they were lending money out. And what started to happen was that one of the big media like blogs that covers the crypto world leaked some documents showing that quite a lot of people's money on the exchange had been lent out. And one of the they started to get some runs because that paper leaked, and then Binance, which is the largest crypto exchange in the world and is run by a slightly less charismatic dude from China, he said, hey, I'm actually going to pull all my funds out of FTX, which could have just looked like anti-competitive behavior. Once again, remember, this is a mostly unregulated space. But, he said, oh, I wouldn't really trust that. And that part of that, combined with the leaked papers, led to essentially a run on it. They initially, even earlier this week, the CEO said, no, we'll have your funds, we'll get it. But then it became clear that it was quite a lot more funds than even a lot of people thought. So it was 16 billion funds were lent to Alameda, which is the investment firm that is affiliated with the FTX exchange. And one of the reasons that so much money had been, so 8 billion had been lent out to Alameda, but 16 billion of that was of the different depositors' amounts. So essentially it was 50% had been lent out, and that is a recipe for disaster. So one of the affiliated things that happened with that is that if they were just functioning as an exchange, they were holding on to depositors' money, and they were taking a small fee off the top of that, and then they were converting into other currencies, it wouldn't be a big deal. But they had a token linked to them. So they had the FTT token, which in crypto, as we've talked about, it's a way to like link the value of something. Anyway, we've talked about this before, and I don't want to get too deep into the depth of it, but the FTT token lost like 90% of its value. So part of the problem that they were also having with that is that FTT token was propping up a lot of this hypothecation that was going on. And so when that lost value, then there also was even less money to repay borrowers with the bank run. So the FTX has been suspended from, it has been like completely blocked by the Bahamas regulatory agencies now. So they froze all their assets on Thursday, and it's looking like the CEO fled the country. So, an exchange that was operating just as an exchange should have been able to survive a crash of their token. But because they were lending so much out to this other investment firm that then had a bunch of things staked on this token, it was just like a cascade of effects. But the real concern here is just how much the underlying structure of having an exchange, the third largest exchange, which, just to be clear, Binance, which is the first largest exchange in the world, was possibly going to buy it. And then everything started to fall apart when Binance looked at the internal books, saw how much was being lent out, and was like, we're not going to buy you. So once Binance said we're pulling out of buying this, then the free fall really started to go. And this is what the concern is that FTX was one of the big exchanges that claimed like they were pro-regulation. Binance is an exchange that even a lot of countries don't allow trading in because of how kind of unregulated it was. But FTX was kind of throwing up this good boy stereotype. And I use that pronoun very specifically. But like, it thrown up this good boy image of like, oh, we're the better crypto, and we're pro regulation. It's more regulated than you think, and the fact that fell apart is part of the reasons that other crypto assets have fallen as well as just the FTT token, right? Like one exchange falling, it shook the underlying confidence in crypto, because this whole claim of like, oh, but there are some regulations, isn't feeling pretty good right now. So that's one of the big things. Don't invest your student loan refund in crypto. Agreed. If there's a run on the bank, FDIC won't work because the country will go bust first. Correct. But I will say that like usually bank runs tend to be mostly localized. Like we've seen quite a few bank runs. So we saw the Texas savings and loan crisis that happened in the 80s. We saw kind of limited bank failures that happened during the financial crisis. And like yes, absolutely, the FDIC would go bust first. But like the way insurance works is that yes. If things are real bad, things will be real bad. But a solo bank runs or solo failings isn't necessarily going to do that. Geograph Concept says, I spent mine on pizza in 2011. Well, I didn't say don't spend your student loans. I just meant your refunds. But so Dude Bro did big crash. Seems to be a pattern lately. Yep, pretty much. So, I have regularly said with crypto, if you want to play. That's fine. It's the same as in my opinion, doing, individual stock betting. I wouldn't put your retirement in it. I wouldn't put anything you can't afford to lose. If it's fun for you to play in that space. But don't put anything that you can't afford to lose. Some people get off on the highs of the constant thrills and ups and downs. I am not the kind of person that enjoys that. I like the slow and steady runs the race. I'm just too anxious for that kind of stuff. But this is yet another evidence of like playing in an unregulated space is dangerous. One of the things that's very frustrating to me is that there's plenty of types of investments that cannot be played with that are roughly irregulated, that cannot be played with unless you are considered a sophisticated investor under SEC regulations. You know, there's all sorts of things, like it's the reason that you can't go out and buy a company that isn't publicly traded unless you're a qualified investor, which means that you have significant assets. You have the ability to essentially lose some things in the stakes. There's certain kinds of REITs that you can't invest in unless you have significant assets, qualified investor, you have the kind of educational background that makes you able to invest in those sort of things. And unfortunately, like I think crypto should be in that category, but it's been held up as this kind of form of gambling. I mean, there was a Super Bowl commercial with Tom Brady on FTX. Like there have been a number of ways in which this has been portrayed not as the risky, unregulated asset that it is. You know, when we talk about horse betting or sports betting, we don't talk about it as an investment strategy. And that is like what we have approached the crypto has been. I have already talked about the crypto boom. Like in times of economic downturn, people look towards creative ways to make money. And that's why we see a rise in day trading. That's why we saw a rise in crypto when a lot of people were unemployed, when a lot of people were dealing with economic uncertainty. And it's really frustrating to me because there are a lot of people that are functionally have a gambling addiction, and it is disguised as crypto. And, you know, most of crypto, because it is a depreciating asset, because it's limited, it is a who's in first sort of pyramid scheme kind of situation. It doesn't mean there isn't some complex instruments in the crypto space, but it is an unregulated investment, and it should not be held up as an alternative to regulated investments, especially to unsophisticated investors. And it is okay to be an unsophisticated investor. So Aaron says, why are all the pet urgent cares so far away? Oh, so the one in like close to us wasn't an option. Okay. Should I check on the cat again, by the way? I got a pet urgent care. All right. If anybody has any questions about the collapse, I may or may not be able to answer it. I'm not a crypto expert. I kind of understand how they work. I'm going to go check in on the cat again. Okay, her wheezing is kind of stopped. She's now asleep, and when I went over to pet her, she went like her little wake up, the wake up sound. So she does seem to be doing a little better. I don't know if maybe she was partially wheezing because she was overexerting herself and being angry at me, but poor baby. Maybe we could just like buy her a humidifier for the house so that she can like breathe more easily. It's one of the things the internet said to do. I was like, can I make her a steaming cup of tea and then just like hold her face over it so it can like decongest her? All right, y'all. Oh, we have a flu for the week, and then I think we're gonna go because I've still got lots of work to do today. But if anybody has any questions about the crypto collapse, please let me know. The stock market is doing a little better than it had been, so the regular stock market. So that's a good sign-ish. It's thinking. All right. There we go. All right. This is our floof of the week. I don't know why it changed the way that it normally displays. Here's our floof of the week. There we go. I don't know what's up with that. Okay, this is our floof of the week. Floof of the week are... Oh, right. Here's our floof of the week intro. week are the floofs and sometimes scalies of the Personal Finance Society members, which are folks that support us with at least a dollar a month or more on Patreon, which you can go to ohmydollar.com/support if you'd like to support us. But they get to send in their cute pets. And this right here is Booze Cat Topaz. She is a sweet, scaredy cat from getting her start in life on the streets. She has lots of monsters to contend with, especially garbage trucks and street sweepers. But she is our love bunny and treats us every morning with super snuggles, belly up, and purrs. We love her. Look how cute she is. Very, very cute. So thank you very much for your support of Oh My Dollar as part of the Personal Finance Society. And I rate Topaz 11 out of 10. Yep. Absolutely and totally gorgeous. Agreed. Yes. Beautiful tortoise shell. We've got lots of cat comments here. All right, y'all. I went 2.5 hours last week, so I feel like an hour is a reasonable stream time. It's also already an hour and 5 minutes. I will investigate if I can get a CPAP, sleep apnea mask for the cat for sleeping. I don't know if that's going to work. Kenneth says 6 hours is better than nothing. She might just need a steroid shot. Yeah, that's true. Maybe she just needs a steroid shot. Healthy, happy flu for the week. Yep. All right, y'all. Well, thank you very much for joining. Next week, I think we're going to be back to Healthcare Month. So if you are dealing with open enrollment questions, if you're trying to figure out what's going on with the exchange, unless we have another emergency block on student loans, just let me know. But yeah, let me know. You can send them to questions@ohmydollar.com, or you can drop them in the forums, which you can find at forum.ohmydollar.com. And let me know if you have any questions about healthcare. I will do my best to answer them. And otherwise, I will see you all next week, which should be same time, same place, but you never know because of the way time zones are these days. And stay safe. Pet a cat if you have one available. Stay hydrated. And I will see you all soon. Bye.